This is Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Hey, buddy, welcome to Teaching to the Test Pattern. I'm Tom White, your host, and in this series, we're talking with what I consider a friend of mine now. We originally met a year or so ago on Facebook, and he was talking about stuff he's doing at his school, and we started chatting on that, and then he announced a month or so ago that this would be his last year teaching, and then I found out that he'd been teaching 39 years, and I was like, well, dude, I have to have you on the podcast. So here he is. He is in Scott City, Kansas. It's a city of about 3,800 people. He's at a school of about 200 people, and we'll tell you in this episode how many of those students are in his program. You're going to be blown away when you hear that. I hope that this episode is motivation for those of you who are in small schools or extremely small schools or small communities. We talk about in this series how he won a national award in 2019, as well as a bunch of state awards throughout his time at Scott Community High School. Couldn't do this show without my friends at Amitrace, AMITRACE.com. Go check them out. Whatever you want to do with video production, they can make it happen. You just have to ask. I mean, it's not magic, though they make it seem like it's magic because they're that good at what they do. Reach out to them, AMITRACE.com. Now, here's part one of my conversation with Scott Holt from Scott Community High School in USD 446 in Kansas. I've messed that up 100 times, but I'm not going to do it anymore. Check out the conversation right now on Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Here sometime too, like I said, about some things to do.
Absolutely. No, this is it's meant to be a conversation, and the questions you have, somebody else may have as well. So we'll roll with that. So I am talking with Scott Holt from USD 446 or 466?
466.
466 in Kansas. And this guy has been teaching for over 35 years. We'll get in a little bit more on that. And he's so good, they named the county after him. They named the school after him. They named the city after him. Scott, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You know, it's kind of a different deal, that's for sure. I've never been on this end of an interview, I guess.
Excellent. Well, again, just have fun. It's more of a chat than an interview. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for your school community.
Okay. Well, as you already explained, my name is Scott Holt. I'm married. I've been married for going to be 39 years this summer to a wonderful wife. Her name is Nancy. And actually, I'm not a Kansas native. I was born in Mayville, North Dakota, back in 1959. And then for you, that's probably a long, you weren't even thought of by then, were you?
My mother was born in 59.
Oh, thanks. I gotcha. And I was raised in Galesburg, North Dakota, and I went to college up there where I graduated from Mayville State. And I married my wife in 81. And we moved to Scott City. So we moved 900 miles away to Scott City, Kansas. And I started teaching fifth grade. And this is where we've stayed since 1981.
So what led from North Dakota to, of all places in the entire world, Scott City?
Well, I didn't care where I moved. So when I was looking, back in the day, you had to go into the list. You went into the administrator's office or wherever it was, and you found the list of open places because we didn't have the internet, didn't have that kind of stuff that you could look at. And I was looking at places. I applied in Arizona, South Dakota, North Dakota, all over. And seriously, there was a couple places in Kansas, Dodge City, and I saw this one that said Scott City. And I applied. And I had done 2 interviews in North Dakota, hadn't heard word back from them yet. And I got a call to come down for an interview down here, and got down here, and they offered me the job that same day. And I guess back then I was I don't know. I guess I wanted something. I didn't even need to think about it. Just by talking to the principal and the superintendent at the time, I took the job that day. Excellent. So it's, kind of different.
So you're in your 39th year teaching, and obviously an abrupt end to your year and career in that. Kind of give us what you would be doing if everything was status quo right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, right now, what time is it? It's 9:46. So I probably have my third hour in here right now. My first several hours, I have my intro kids. So we'd probably, I haven't even thought about what we've been doing. We've been working on some chase scenes. We've been doing some little film stuff, and my kids have just been finishing up some chase scene videos. And, they've been having some good times with that. And man, there's been some funny and interesting things that some of these kids have come up with. But yeah, I'd be working with my intro kids and getting ready for my advanced students that'd be coming in right now that we were just going to, I hadn't even figured out what we were going to start yet, but we had just gotten done with some short films with them too. And, having some fun with that.
So we were talking before we came on air about kind of your career. You didn't start teaching video production. How did you start in education?
Well, I guess, when I was young, the thing was the people, I guess what kids or boys wanted to do for sure was, hey, let's be an astronaut. And the other thing I wanted to do was be a teacher. And my mom was a teacher, and excuse me, I just knew that one of those things was going to be it. Well, the astronaut thing wasn't going to work out because I couldn't even swing without getting sick. So I knew that I probably wasn't going to be that. And I knew that that's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to work with kids. I like that kind of stuff. And, teaching was something that I knew I was meant for. And that's what I started doing. Elementary was my first choice because I liked younger kids, and it just became what I was.
And for the last several years, you've been doing video production. What made the jump from elementary school teacher to video production? And I guess, it said like the leap. Well, and I don't even know if it was really a leap or a jump or anything. It's a long, long story about, how I got started. For video, first of all, I was a coach. I was a coach in football for over 20 years, basketball for about 25, 26. I coached baseball for 7 years. But when I got started in video production is when I was in coaching, because I coached with a guy that's a really good friend of mine now, Glenn O'Neill. He came in. He was a head coach. And he just pretty much said he knew that I had liked working with video. And he said, you're going to do all the video stuff, make sure that we get good quality video, all this. And so I worked with that, did all the highlights. And, when I did all the highlights for things, I always kind of put my special little trademark in it and didn't just give the kids, just a highlight video. I always put some special touch in it. The last year, one of the things I did was I made it into kind of a Western format. Our seniors, I had them come walking out of the woods in their Western gear. They had horses. We had all this kind of stuff, and just kind of made it a fun type thing. And, so everything that I did, I kind of learned as I went along, self-taught, did that stuff because I never had any education or training in it. And so it was one of these kind of things that I was just kind of good at. And I learned along the way from good people too. But, my work just kept getting better and better. And many people took notice to where the superintendent and principal at the time, I think they had wanted to start something in it because they saw that this was kind of the future, the way things are going and the way things are progressing. So they were looking at it in a way of, how can we do things to prepare our kids for the future? And so they came and talked to me and asked, what kind of ideas, what can we do? I mean, they didn't really know.
I mean, they just know that they wanted to do something, but they didn't know what it was. So we were in the process for about a year, and we were kind of figuring out what we would do. I didn't know if I was even going to do it yet. So I did a lot of research. I checked with programs. I checked with all the different ones from Texas to California to wherever they had, there was stuff out there. And I would look at the programs, see what they could do. And, after about a year of discussions, I decided it's something that I wanted to try. It's something I wanted to try to do. And so I decided we were going to make the switch. And I asked the administration, one of the things I said, okay, so I'm going to switch. What do you want me to do? And they said, whatever you want to do. And I said, okay. And that was it.
Excellent. That's often a gift and a curse at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So we talk about your career and in my research about you, obviously how everybody researches people now, I stalked your Facebook page for a little bit, and there were some comments from students in years past, and one that stuck out to me talking about your impact was someone posted, I bet y'all don't remember who your fifth grade teacher was, and they were like, oh yeah, I remember Mr. Holt, and you haven't been teaching elementary school for a while. So in that vein, what is the biggest accomplishment of your career?
Oh boy. Man, I think every day I went to work was an accomplishment just because, of the impact that you can put on kids. But the way things, I don't know. That was really kind of a tough one. The way things changed all the time, keeping up with those changes, I thought was an accomplishment. Winning an award from the NFHS network for the best live sports broadcast for us, that was a big one. But I think probably the biggest accomplishment that for me, when I really look back at it, was to be able to start this whole new curriculum, get it implemented on my own, and get kids out into something they never would have probably even thought of doing out here in Western Kansas was probably my biggest accomplishment. And maybe when I get done with this, I'll say, oh man, I should have said, this, but right now I'm thinking that this is probably what it is. It took a lot of time to do all this stuff, to get it, things that I started with 7 years ago, I don't even hardly use anymore because of how things have changed. But, to be able to do this when there were no guidelines, I think if they would have come out and said, okay, here's what we want you to do, this, and this, it probably would have been a lot easier than me having to go out and steal things from this teacher and put things together. But then I guess it probably wouldn't have been as much my own as it would have been, without it. So,
and, you talk about winning the NFHS network award, and, when you win those things and, you think about big schools, and I know that, as I watch, as those awards are announced, I'm like, oh, that's a massive school. Loaded question. Tell people how big your school is.
Well, from 9 through 12, we have about, depending on the year, this year I think we have about 260 students. We've had less, we've had a little bit more, but that's where we're at right now, 260 kids.
And now for the video teacher that is at a small school who is looking around going, I don't know what I can do. Tell them how many students you have of that 250, 270 students.
I have about 53, 54 students. I think 53 or 54 students. I can't remember for sure, one of those two.
So 20% of the student population at Scott Community High School are in your class. That is that says a lot about what you've done to build that program and show the importance of what your program is.
Teaching to the test pattern.
So imagine that wherever you are, no matter how big your school is, imagine if you have 20% of your school population in your program. That is a big deal, and congrats to Scott for his work and making that happen over the last 7 years, when he has really taken over that program, or started that program and put it in a pretty good spot. In the next episode, you're going to hear Scott talk about winning the NFHS Network Award in 2019 and just kind of his thoughts as he processed through that. You're going to hear a lot through this about a guy who has kind of overcome the odds and has worked hard to kind of build a program where, in a small town like that, you don't think of a program being as successful as his is, and you're going to hear about the impact that he's making on that community. If you want to increase your impact, please visit Amitrace, AMITRACE.com. Those guys can get you where you want to be when it comes to video production. Check out episodes 2 and 3 that are available right now. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and as always, go make some awesome.
Teaching to the test pattern.